Special thanks to Forever Entertainment for providing me with a review copy. The House of the Dead franchise has been a staple in any arcade since the first game graced us with its presence in 1996. It's an on-rails shooter that combines B-movie acting and gore, with each subsequent sequel ramping up the insanity further and further. The most recent entry in the long-running series was 2018's House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn, which removes the trademarked "the" for some reason, but since then there hasn't been any talks of a new mainline game, either in the arcade or on console/PC. That was the case until April 14, 2021, when Nintendo announced a remake of the first game during an Indie World showcase. The remake was said to be developed by Megapixel Studio and published by Forever Entertainment. Considering that they developed the moderately successful remake of Panzer Dragoon, another Sega title, they seem to be a good fit. But due to Sega being, well, Sega, the source code for the original arcade game was lost, and while it was spelled doomed for other developers, Megapixel Studio was determined to recreate the entire game using the Unity engine, which was done mostly remotely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The weird thing about releasing an on-rail shooter in the modern day is the lack of light guns, which made the move to release the House of the Dead remake on the Nintendo Switch first understandable. Megapixel Studio and Forever Entertainment's Panzer Dragoon remake was also released first on the Nintendo Switch, but the Joy-Con's gyro controls work best as a light gun replacement. The Switch version was released on April 7th, 2022, and for everything else it was released on April 28th, 2022. The other versions of the game offer motion controls, which work as fine as you think they would. I played the game on the PlayStation 4 and 5. The 4's motion controls work surprisingly well, while the 5's motion controls feel a bit sluggish. I haven't played it on PC or the Xbox, although I would assume you could attach your old light guns when you played on PC, but other than a lack of official light gun support, which isn't going to be remedied in any physical release, which is disappointing, how did Megapixel Studios and Forever Entertainment handle their second attempt at reviving a Sega IP? The House of the Dead franchise isn't particularly known for its story and lore, but there's a story if you look hard enough. The story is broken up into 4 chapters: Tragedy, Revenge, Truth, and The House of the Dead. You play as either Thomas Rogan or Agent G, 2 members of the AMS, which is a government agency. Rogan gets a call from his fiancée Sophie that Dr. Kurian has gone mad and released POWs in a research facility that Sophie works at. The duo raid Kurian's mansion and find Sophie right before she's taken by Hangman, a bat-human hybrid. As the duo goes further into the mansion, they once again find Sophie, but then she is immediately attacked and seemingly murdered by a chariot. Sophie is probably one of the most unluckiest women in all of gaming. As she dies, she pleads that Rogan has to stop Kurian before he destroys everything. Rogan and G continue on and kill Hangman. They then meet up with Kurian, who quickly escapes and releases a giant spider to kill you. You guys kill Hermit the giant spider and follow Kurian into an underground lab. The final chapter acts like a boss rush mode, with you fighting Chariot and Hangman once again, minus Hermit. You then mow down the rest of Kurian's monster army and encounter him one last time. He unleashes the magician, and in true mad scientist fashion, the magician immediately kills Kurian because he doesn't take directions. The duo fights the magician, and after he falls like the rest of the monsters he faced, Rogan spits on Kurian's grave and bids farewell to his fallen love. The game has 3 endings, all based on your performance throughout the 4 chapters. If you get below 62,000 points that end with a 0, Sophie has been reanimated as a corpse and shambles around the mansion. If you get below 62,000 points that doesn't end in a 0, you get a final shot at the mansion. The third and true ending is that if you get over 62,000 points, you see Sophie running out of the mansion exclaiming "thank you." I've only seen 2 of the endings, but I've never gotten the bad ending, where Sophie's walking around as a zombie. The story is serviceable considering it's just a story from the original game, but people play the House of the Dead for the gameplay rather than the story itself, so let's talk about that. On top of killing hordes of the undead, you're also tasked with saving hostages that are placed within each chapter. If you save them, they give you additional health or even health upgrades. But if you kill them either intentionally or by mistake, you lose a third of your health. The number of hostages saved in each chapter can grant you additional lives, which further adds an incentive to save them. If you save every hostage in one sitting, you can unlock the Armory, a room filled with health items and extra points. Unlocking the Armory allows you to unlock extra weapons that are found in each chapter. Going through each chapter at this point and unlocking these weapons makes the new mode that this game offers way more fun. On top of playing through the campaign, the game offers a Horde mode. The Horde mode has you playing through the main campaign, but with a bunch of additional enemies to fill the screen. Horde mode is fun to go through with these additional weapons, which include a crossbow, stake gun, assault rifle, and a grenade launcher. Personally, I think Horde mode would have been better if it at least remixed the campaign stages, but playing around with the arsenal you've accumulated has its perks. Racking up points is really fun, and in the rare case you lose all your lives, you can spend a bunch of it buying more lives, but that's limited to 3 extra lives. Fortunately, the game doesn't have any microtransactions, so it's all up to the player's ability to get good. The only consequence of buying more lives is that it deducts from your total high score, which seems fair in all honesty. Each stage offers multiple ways from getting from point A to point B. These are triggered by failing to save one of the researchers, getting attacked by an enemy, or interacting with the environment. These aspects makes the game worth going through over and over again, especially when you're hunting for these new weapons. At one point during the first level, you can shoot a staircase covered in rocks to proceed if you have the grenade launcher, which is cool. I have no idea if it's good for speedrunning or not, but it often leaves you finding new ways to play these 4 levels with each playthrough. Often, these new areas can present new enemies that are only in that area, which can be used to complete the trophies. Honestly, the game is really fun to play, and I've played it about 20 times from start to finish, either by myself or with my brother. The multiplayer options are either cooperative or competition, and they're just a fun time. The only thing I can really say here is that the game offers a classic or modern toggle for getting points, and I suggest going modern all the way. Classic mode doesn't allow you to rack up kill combos, and if you're fighting a boss, there's no point indicator to show you that you're doing damage. The game has a big boss health meter, but you're not going to be focusing on it while you're playing the game. So with the modern scoring system, you can see the damage you're doing, which makes it a bit easier. Acquiring trophies can apparently offer cheat codes, such as one-hit kills or limited ammo, and they are acquired by trophy hunting. If you get a certain amount of trophies, you can input a combination in the main menu and unlock the code. The game tells you that these exist, but I've never seen the combinations in-game. You could just search them up online if it matters to you. It could end up making the game way more fun. I'm probably gonna try them out after finishing up this video in all honesty. You could even use them to play through the hardest difficulties and maybe grind out the trophies if it's allowed in game. The last thing that I want to touch on in regards to the gameplay is the actual shooting you'll be doing in the game. Automated shooters are known for having a player use a like-on accessory to play the game. Even when they're released on consoles, a like-on accessory is provided, either by the developers themselves or by a third-party company. For some reason, there isn't a like-on accessory for this game, and unless you're on PC, there's no way to use other like-on accessories. While the Switch's gyro functions can properly emulate a light gun, other consoles aren't as lucky, so for everyone else you're gonna have to use a controller, and that just feels wrong. The PlayStation 4 and 5 have a motion control function with options to adjust the sensitivity level, and while it works, it feels a bit sluggish. I already mentioned the differences between the console's motion control capabilities, but if you're not using that function, you're moving the crosshair using the analog stick. The right trigger and X button are used to shoot your myriad weapons, while the circle button and left trigger are used to reload said myriad weapons. The left and right trigger option feels uncomfortable, and while that's weird considering most first-person shooters are wired that way, it just feels weird and eventually your hands start to hurt. On top of feeling weird and hurting my hands, I always end up pressing the left bumper, and the left bumper activates the motion control option, and when that happens I'm fumbling to deactivate it and I end up dying in the game. So I went with an analog/button combo that fixes the awkwardness of using the triggers. With that option, I found myself slamming both the shoot and reload button to have fake unlimited ammo, which was really fun. I still managed to fuck my hands up anyway, especially during the magician boss fight. I think I made a couple tweets about it, it'll be on the screen if anything. It would have been cool to have a hunk of plastic that probably would have prevented the tendinitis I probably got while playing the game for tens of hours. But the game is genuinely fun, and I found myself using it as something to relax to because it came out during college finals. Could that make me a bit biased? Perhaps, but while I had a great time playing the game despite its lack of iconic paraphernalia, I did have other criticisms that I logged onto my notes app, and it had to do with the House of the Dead remake was made for last generation consoles and can be played on current generation consoles as well as PC. With that in mind, it baffles me as to why it feels like a next generation game being ported to lesser hardware. On the title screen, the background footage at times looks compressed and messy. The post-credit scenes are both choppy and compressed, which makes no sense. The game visuals are also inconsistent. At times the game looks amazing, and other times the game looks muddy. We have these nice sculpted environments, and one wall has flat textures. It's more apparent during the end scene of Chapter 2, and it's right in front of your face, which seems like an oversight. The load screens run a mile a minute, but that's remedied on the PlayStation 5, which is weird. I get that the SSD drive allows the game to run faster, but for a game made for the PlayStation 4, I expected to run the best it can on a PlayStation 4. At first I assumed that it was because it was made on the Switch first, but apparently it was just made in Unity and they worked on each console's ports separately, so it can't be because it was first released on the Switch. Dying Light 2 or Resident Evil Village having issues on the PlayStation 4 makes sense. It's a PlayStation 5 game being forced to run on the PlayStation 4, but a PlayStation 4 game running like garbage when it's made for it makes no sense. The human character models are also a bit weird. Rogan's beard looks like plastic, and Kieran looks a bit odd. The models could be made ironically weird on the basis that it's a cheesy, ironic kind of game, but I doubt that it was done on purpose. The game also has a sound mixing issue. When you save hostages, they often say thank you, but the music is so loud their audio is drowned out. Any other interactions between the main characters are mixed normally, but for these hostages, it's a whole other story, which is weird. The game also hard froze on me once, and that was when I tried to go back to the main menu. It didn't ear rape me like Werewolf the Apocalypse, so that's a plus. The game also has a huge frame rate problem, with the game dipping randomly. I rarely encountered this on the PlayStation 5, but when it happened, it was noticeable. During my solo playthroughs, these frame drops happened around combat, but they didn't cause me to die or take any unnecessary damage. It felt like a weird slap in the face rather than tossing me off my chair. That didn't happen until I decided to push the game to its limits by playing Horde mode while playing with my brother, and yeesh. While the initial frame drops were an annoyance at first, multiplayer Horde mode has the worst case of frame drops. So much so that I was afraid that the game was going to crash, but it ended up just being disorientating. What adds insult to injury is that this is the additional content made for this remake. A remake that's pretty much shot for shot, despite not having the original source code, which is commendable. But most people play this game with friends and family, so it's ridiculous that it runs the worst when you play with people in the mode you created for this remake. Hopefully, they keep supporting this game throughout the rest of this year, which sounds like wishful thinking because they're currently working on the remake of The House of the Dead 2. Now that I'm thinking about it, if the game ran like this, that's probably why they didn't include online multiplayer. But that would mean they knew that the game has stability issues ahead of time, and those haven't been patched out yet. I'm writing this video on June 3rd, and I've been playing the game while writing this video. If these issues persist on the PlayStation 4, I wonder how worse it is on the Nintendo Switch of all things. Also, for some reason when the magician powers up for an attack, it looks really pixelated. At first, I assumed that it was a callback to the original game, but when I looked at footage of the arcade version, it's not pixelated like that. Is it a glitch, or a broken asset, or even a joke? Well, upon further research, it seems to be strictly a console glitch. I looked at footage from the Nintendo Switch, Xbox Series X, and Google Stadia, and the glitch is present, but when I looked at the PC port, the glitch is gone. I didn't expect that to be the result of my 3 seconds of research, but here it is. But to wrap up this segment in a positive light, I really hope that they include PSVR support for this game or even the sequel. The camera work is really smooth, and with the zombies and monsters jumping out, it will be cool to have it on VR. And when they release a sequel at some point, I hope they release it with a chunk of plastic. While I had my issues with the House of the Dead remake, I can confidently say that I had a great time playing this game. I spent weeks just playing through the game over and over again without getting bored in the slightest. I went online to learn to get the special weapons, and I did a run to unlock the armory and I got them all. And after writing, recording, and editing this video, I'll probably go play it again. This is why all these issues are frustrating. They did a great job, and I wish they had an extra month or so to iron out these bugs. The game is currently $25 on all platforms, and for what you're getting, I think it's a fair deal. But with it being the summer, you can always grab it during one of the many sales if you're a bit hesitant about getting it. I've seen how this game looks on PC and is gorgeous, so I would suggest buying it on Steam, as well as the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. Oh, I forgot about the music, and I actually want to take some time to discuss it briefly. The biggest controversy that comes from this game was the creation of a new soundtrack for the remake. The songs were not remixed like in other games, but omitted in its entirety. This was due to the development team deciding to avoid the long and complicated process of licensing the original tracks from Tetsuya Kawauchi, so they brought in Sebastian Poncelet to create a soundtrack from the ground up. Despite that, the new soundtrack has some hints of the original, but which one is better? At first, I was eager to say the remake because the music did its job at getting me excited to kill zombies and monsters, but after listening to both the original and new soundtrack, I had to harness my inner Fantano, and I gotta say, I like the original soundtrack way more. The original soundtrack had variety in sound. It's very 90s Sega with hints of rock and funk, but the remake leans heavily into EDM, and while track 3 is pretty iconic in its own right, I sided mostly with the original soundtrack most of the time, especially for the magician theme and the theme of Chapter 4. The original soundtrack feels like the final track, while the remake sounds like a regular track, not as bombastic as it should be. It sounded a bit subdued. I still enjoyed the remake's version of Chapter 4, but it doesn't hit the mark where it matters. But that ends my review of the House of the Dead remake, a 3.9 out of 5. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video and want to see more, like, comment, and subscribe so it can be favored by the almighty algorithm and be seen by more people. I, of course, want to give special thanks to Forever Entertainment and Megapixel Studio for providing me with a review copy and being super understanding. I mean, the game came out on April 28th, and the review is coming out in June, so thanks to them once again. I'd also like to thank my patrons for supporting the channel. They are Leocrit, HACHI, and Retroroy, and for $1 a month, your name can show up right here. Love you guys, and shamalamamoomoo.
Sophie, are you okay?
I was so scared.